Labour is pledging to reduce net migration, criticising past Conservative policies, but provides no detailed targets.
Today we publish a white paper on immigration, a strategy absolutely central to my plan for change that will finally take back control of our borders and close the book on a squalid chapter for our politics, our economy and our country. Between 2019 and 2023, even as they were going round our country, telling people with a straight face that they would get immigration down, net migration quadrupled until in 2023 it reached nearly 1 million. That's about the population of Birmingham, our second largest city. That's not control, it's chaos. A one-nation experiment in open borders, conducted on a country that voted for control. Well, no more. Today, this Labour government is shutting down the lab. The experiment is over. We will deliver what you've asked for time and again, and we will take back control of our borders. I'm doing this because it is right, because it is fair, and because it is what I believe in. Now, in a diverse nation like ours, and I celebrate that, these rules become even more important. Without them, we risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together. So when you have an immigration system that seems almost designed to permit abuse, that encourages some businesses to bring in lower paid workers rather than invest in our young people, or simply one that is sold by politicians to the British people on an entirely false premise, then you're not championing growth, you're not championing justice, or however else people defend the status quo. You're actually contributing to the forces that are slowly pulling our country apart.
One part in that speech that many jumped on, obviously there's many parts that we will talk about, but one part and one line sounded very similar to a famous speech in British political history. And our friends over at Navarra Media actually posted this very quickly after Starmer did this speech.
We risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together.
They found themselves made strangers in their own country.
Yes, that is obviously the famous Rivers of Blood speech by Enoch Powell. I believe, was it 1967 or 1968? Just to put it into context very quickly, obviously I'm sure everyone here knows the Rivers of Blood speech, but for anyone who doesn't, this was at a time when the government was about to ascend a bill and it was going to stop people getting discriminated against for housing, for employment. And this was a moment in British political history that is now often quoted every other week and every other day, with the Overton window that we're living in now and the side of it that we're living in now. And I was just browsing on the Guardian News live feed about all the updates throughout the day while the Keir Starmer speech was playing, and I saw that John McDonnell actually posted that he said this is the language of Enoch Powell. So, when sometimes people on the left can be, I think we can be sometimes a little bit dramatic, right? I think that's all sides are guilty of this, but you've got John McDonnell, the former Labour MP who's still suspended from the Labour Party, saying this is the words of Enoch Powell. Noffel, that is a lot of information. What are your kind of just initial thoughts? We've got the video, we've got the new restrictions and changes, and then we'll go into some more specifics.
So obviously we can look at this in two different spheres. One of them is obviously the speech and the language that Starmer is using. The second thing is to look at the economic side of this. It's really rich for Starmer to say that this isn't political and that this is not about talking about the demographics, about voter change, but it quite inherently is, because Rupert Lowe, not long after Starmer tweeted the language restrictions out, said that he claims the online right have shifted the Overton window and there's more to do. So whether Starmer likes it or not, whether he can fool people or not, Reform UK are being emboldened from this, and they are convincing people that Labour are simply scared and they're just doing this to appease to their voters. So that's one aspect of this. The second aspect to look at this is from the economic side, which is whether, and it is true that most of the UK population want immigration down, whether or not we think that's a good thing, you still would need immigration as a interim period if you are to skill up UK workers, because it can't happen overnight. You cannot reform the care sector while still giving out private contracts. You cannot reform the care sector while still offering them low pay, and you certainly can't skill up British workers if you're not investing in the human capital to do that. So whether you want to see net migration up or down, let's say you want to see it down, you cannot simply end immigration in the way Starmer is talking about, albeit at a very low number, which is estimated from these policies, and expect that we will somehow improve our health service, because you're still going to be shilling out a ton of money into places it shouldn't be.
Yeah. What frustrates me about all of this is the numbers game. And obviously it's weaponized by the right, and now obviously Keir Starmer, who is the new right, they're playing into this game too. For me, it's not about getting the numbers down. This isn't, for me, obviously about reducing immigration. That shouldn't be the motivation about any of this. It's concerning the amount of immigration that we have to rely on, because that's an unstable source of human capital in many ways. Because there is a global shortage of workers in lots of different areas, right? We have medical workers, there's a global shortage of those, and lots of other different types of skilled workers. And we're firstly taking people from their country who, and we're causing shortages there. And the motivation for me shouldn't be about reducing the numbers, but it should be about skilling up and obviously helping people in the UK. But even if we threw every resource that we had in terms of, making sure everybody had all the money, all the resources, all the skills, all the training that they had to, thrive and work and earn good money and have good housing, the reality is we still wouldn't have enough people. And we're always going to have to rely on immigration to some extent. Our birth rate is not going to go back to replacement. Like, I think it was Finland that had the only successful actual push with this. And they managed to push the birth rate up more than any other country has. But it's still, I believe, and anyone in the comments correct me if I'm wrong, they're still not back at replacement rate. They just had the best gains, so to speak. But again, this ties into this like infinite growth system that we're in, right? It always comes back essentially to capitalism. And we have an aging population. We have a crappy economy. And I feel like if Labour wanted to do this, they could go down the path of, we need to scale up people. We need to invest in people. We need to invest in communities. We need to invest in education. But tied to the rhetoric of everything else that's come with this Labour government and Keir Starmer, tied to, the close quote, it's not an exact quote, but the close quote to Enoch Powell, I just, I don't even know what to almost like say anymore. I don't know where to go with this. We keep saying that they've moved the Overton window. They are essentially opening the gates to the right, because why would you vote for Labour, right? They've essentially stolen a couple of Tory policies here, with the extension to how long it takes to get indefinitely to remain. And then, they're essentially buying into the reform policy of deporting all foreign criminals. Now, they didn't say they're going to deport all foreign criminals, but they're changing the rules around that. They're reducing it. You would just vote for these parties, wouldn't you, if you wanted this? So Labour are offering nothing. They're moving the Overton window. They're normalizing this. They're invoking the language of one of the most far-right, racist, inflammatory speeches in all of British political history. But for what? They're not gaining anything. They're not gaining any support. And, Nigel Farage tweeted out today, 600 people have come on boats today. One of them might be an Iranian terrorist, is what he said. And you know what? If Starmer tweeted the same thing out tomorrow, it just wouldn't surprise me. If you told me that was a Starmer tweet, it wouldn't surprise me anymore. I don't know where to go with this, but what are your thoughts?
I think what's particularly interesting to me as well is not just the proximity towards using language now, right? We're talking about strangers in your own country, but it's also the denial Starmer has, and quite broadly the Labour Party, that this is not to appease anyone. This is not a shift to the right at all. This is what Labour is now, and this is what Labour will be until the next election. And I think that particularly is quite scary, because we're seeing a Labour Party that's in limbo. We're not seeing one that's dedicated on premises of what they used to be, or necessarily representing working people. No matter how Starmer can say it, and no matter what we personally think, Reform have got the upper hand here. They are controlling the narrative, and the far right have got the access to shift the political debate further to the right. You can say that's not the case, but the truth is, liberalism does in some cases lead to the early stages of populist right-wing governments. And what I was saying earlier is it's particularly scary because if we look a couple years later down the line, Reform is still estimated to gain seats. Of course, if they push for even more radical ideas, let's say there's more splintering between Farage and Rupert Lowe, Labour's just going to go straight to Reform and go straight to their policies. And I think that's the most dangerous place we're at. It's not Reform. Reform are quite predictable. It's actually Labour that are very dangerous right now. And we don't know where they're going to push the political debate further because we don't simply know how Reform are going to respond to this. And even on the backdrop of the local election, I think Reform have surprised themselves in some way of how well they've also done. So Labour are quite frankly emboldening them. I'm sure Farage is laughing, quite frankly, behind the scenes of how easily he's been able to do this. And I think it is going to grow to look at people like, going to grow where the UK population is looking at Starmer and they're thinking, we really do have a spineless leader. I want someone that's a strongman. And unfortunately, this is the era of strongman politics. Farage cozies up to Trump. He likes his tactics and simply people are going to go to Reform.
Yeah, I think from what I can guess here, this is my theory on like what is exactly going through their mind. It seems to me like they're trying to eliminate possible headlines which are currently being weaponized. We all know the headlines of a few weeks ago, was it like a month ago, asylum seeker gets to stay in the country, he was a criminal for like not liking chicken nuggets. Again, the story was bullshit. Look into it. Just, I'm not even going to go into it, but it was bullshit. There's all these types of headlines every week, every other day. The Telegraph is publishing. The Telegraph keep a really close eye on this, but other ones do it too, about all these like ridiculous stories of how a criminal can stay in the country. There's no point even going into the facts and figures of how many people are successful in these appeals because it's actually very little. But these are causing headlines. So they're changing or wanting to change how Article 8, the right to family life, I think the correct line is for Article 8 in the ECHR. They're trying to change how that's applied in the UK. That gets rid of those headlines. When it comes to obviously being able to just deport anyone else, they're obviously making sure that if there can't possibly be a headline where there is a person in the country who may commit a very minor sexual offence in any way. It could be, flashing, and then that person can now be deported under these rules. I don't argue about that, but it seems to me that's essentially what they're trying to do with these changes. And when it comes to just simply getting the numbers down, as you mentioned, it's just overall, I think it's just a terrible direction to put the economy in, because essentially you can try and get the numbers down all you want, but unless you fix the root issue of why we need this immigration, why we rely on it so much, you're just only going to harm us. And all these changes and all these revisions, it just seems like they're trying to eliminate headlines instead of like making them for themselves, because they know that there's basically no opportunity here for them. They can't make any good news, so they're just trying to eliminate any bad news against them. And I feel like their mindset is, oh, if we just become more right wing, we can defeat the far right, and then it's like it pays itself off, right? It's worth it. It's a sacrifice that we have to make. But what's the country going to look like in 5 years if this does actually become genuinely the new norm? Because this is, in many ways, hard right policies that the Tories would absolutely love and endorse. They're obviously going to attack them, right, and be like, "Oh, it doesn't go far enough." But in the background, they'd be eating this shit up. If this was Kemi Badenoch's new policy, everybody in her party would be probably very happy with her. And what is the country going to look like in 5 years when this is just the new norm, where we are harming ourselves constantly, which we already have with Brexit. We're harming ourselves with this, and it's just now normal. Like, we're solidly in the hard right part of the Overton window, and I just don't see a way back from it, to be honest.
Well, that's the irony, and one of the things I think Starmer was talking about, which is community. And community is such a big topic for a lot of people over, the last decade plus of austerity. They feel like there is no community. They feel like all you have is individualism. People are concerned with their own lives, and people aren't bridging gaps in local areas and building up things like it used to, youth clubs, the idea of having enough financial capability to go out and do things with friends and family, working overtime, those sort of things, austerity cuts which damage your public services that you use. Those are all results of those are all things which cause community to shrink. And when we're looking at the future and we're creating an environment in which we're saying England should not be home to people who can't speak English, you're amplifying the community issue of looking inwards within your own community to see who deserves to be here. That's basically what we're doing. Do you deserve to be here, or do you not deserve to be here? And I think that premise is particularly worrying because it inherently leads to a racialized way of thinking, because the color of the people that we see in the news that is related to immigration, it's always black and brown. It's always people from the Middle East. When you talk about people not speaking English, it's usually those from the Middle East. And it has contributed to this community policing thing where you're looking at people of different races and you are assuming that they don't deserve to be here. So I think if you want a community back, if you want a society in which you feel like your local neighborhoods are thriving, we need to cut out American businesses buying up places on your high street, bring back the ability for people to go back and build their own businesses. You need to bring back funding to councils, which will allow for that sort of integration where people can bridge those sort of gaps. I think it's just ironic, frankly, economically even speaking, that anyone thinks that this sort of policy will enrich their local communities. It won't. I've grown up in multicultural areas. I've grown up with people that can't speak English, and we've gotten along fine, actually, because we're not constantly policing each other. And, as things get worse, I think that it's going to become a hostile environment for everyone.
Yeah, one topic that came up when Trump first came in was about him trying to end birthright citizenship, and the first pushback was all the researchers, all the academics, all the experts on this topic who said, no, like, we have been studying like this for years, and actually giving people birthright citizenship, and it's not necessarily what I'm advocating for, but I'll get to the point, is that it makes people feel like that they belong, that it actually helps integration, it helps people fitting into the community, feeling American, because they have that right from birth. And this idea as well of extending the right to claim citizenship or whatever it is up to around 10 years with some exceptions, it's just going to prolong that period. And it ties into, Trump trying to get rid of birthright citizenship. It's not the same thing, but if people have to wait longer to feel like they're British and feel like they have that security and feel like they have that citizenship, it's going to harm integration. It's going to harm people feeling safe and secure in this country. Because obviously as well, look what Trump's also done, right? He's got rid of, literally with a swipe of a pen, people who were here on certain types of special visas. Yeah. And they were in the country, and some of them were just, months, if not years away from getting citizenship. And he, with a swipe of a pen, he's just cancelled their visas. And, we could have a period of time where reform come into power and do something similar because of this extension. Because there are people in this country now who would have qualified for citizenship if they change these rules, that will have to now wait longer. And then on top of that, these visa changes, if you have to wait, however many extra years in the country to get your citizenship, then the visa costs alone. So I said earlier, personal story. It's personal to somebody else. I used to work with a woman at a charity that I used to work for. She's South African. She has 3 children. Her and her husband moved here. He's a skilled worker. He works in finance. Luckily, he's very rich. He earns good money. I think pretty much in the high 6 figures. But she was telling me when I was working with her, every other year they have to pay these visa fees, and it's £1,500 to £2,000 per family member. So just do the maths. It's almost there's 5 of them, so about 10 grand. It's going to be completely unfeasible for some people. There are people here who are skilled workers, but of course they might be on 40, 50, 60 grand. You can't pay out 10 grand every year on top of the cost of living here, having 3 kids. So, skilled workers who we do actually need, we have shortages. People come here, share their skills. They help grow the industry here. With their skills that we don't even have in this country. And do you think they're going to come here now if they have to, pay these visa fees for an extra 5 years? It's just creating a more hostile environment. And Zoe Gardner, friend of the show, if you don't follow her, please go and do. You'll see her on like BBC, LBC, being a big advocate for, you know, a more friendly, humane immigration system. And she wrote an article today in LBC, an opinion piece, basically saying everything that I just said about how this is not going to help community. It's actually going to harm community because people are going to have to wait longer and be more insecure while they're here for a longer period of time. So how does that help build up the community in any way? We will move on to the next part of the story very quickly because I want to make sure that we cover everything. We have a poll related to this, which was released today by British Future, showing that when you add a little nuance to the numbers game and when it comes to immigration, there is actually wide support for immigration in lots of different ways. So most of the public would choose not to reduce migration of people coming to the UK for a wide range of jobs, from doctors at 77% of people and care home workers at 71%, to fruit pickers at 70% and catering staff at 63%, lorry drivers at 63%, and engineers at 65%. And along with that, 2/3, 65% of people who participated say they would not reduce the number of students coming to the UK. And people who voted Labour in 2024 are less inclined to support reductions, with 55% preferring overall immigration numbers to stay the same or increase. So, you know, British Future put together this poll, very good and very timely for today. So thank you to them. And I just think it's also worth pointing out, as a Telegraph did, and sorry, I've just, I didn't put the graphic up for this, but I will read it out. But this is from the Telegraph, just reminding us what Keir Starmer said just 5 years ago. So Keir Starmer joined dozens of Labour MPs campaigning against the deportation of about 50 foreign criminals to Jamaica. When he ran for the Labour leadership, he demanded free movement after Brexit, as well as full voting rights for EU nationals. And he used his maiden speech in Parliament to raise concerns about a Tory attempt to stop dangerous foreign criminals using human rights laws to avoid deportation. So I took that out of the Telegraph today just to kind of emphasize how far Keir Starmer has come. And it's not one of these like moments where it's like, oh, you said this thing 5 years ago, it's a gotcha. I just think it's an incredibly important measure to say how far somebody's come, because I'm not one of these people who expect my politicians to have said something 10 years ago and they have to, never ever change their mind. That their mind can change, their opinion can develop, and we can have honest conversations about that. But I think it's a very, very stark and dangerous contrast to, where he said he was, just like when he ran for the Labour leadership and made all these wonderful, very left-leaning promises. And as soon as he got the power, he purged the left of the party, moved to the right, and has helped move the Overton window to where it is now. Not full. If people looking at this polling data, and this isn't unique, I've seen this polling being done before. Martin Lewis actually went very viral for a speech like this 2 or 3 years ago, basically saying, when you ask people, should we reduce immigration? They'll say yes, yes, yes. Everyone will say yes. But as soon as you say, well, should we reduce immigration on doctors? Most people will say no. And you just add a tiny little bit of nuance to the conversation, and you will see that people will quickly answer very differently. So why we're not having nuanced conversations about this, not whole.
I think it's the whole reason we're talking about this, isn't it? It's really interesting. There was a similar poll done in multiple different states in America, right? And this is in regards to mass amnesty, which is allowing people in and giving them citizenship, or the ability to be on track to get citizenship, and deportation. And overwhelmingly, people supported mass amnesty more. And you once again added nuance to that question when you were specifically talking about people in essential service jobs such as agriculture and construction, and it boosted even more. And it really just relays back to the idea that when you think about Britain, and when you think about the idea of working hard, if you ask people, would you like a hard worker, in which they know there's a large shortage of essential workers in certain sectors, they're of course going to say yes. But the problem is that Farage's narrative and the scapegoating of immigrants relies on the idea that they're not hardworking, right? It relies and creates this image of the immigrant, which is coming to this country to claim benefits, and that is coming here to commit crime and isn't as valued as anyone else in the UK. And that going forward is the image that we're creating of immigration versus what we've known for decades. We've always brought immigrants over from different colonies that we used to have, for example, and we've always brought immigrants over when we needed large-scale projects. And so I think the reason that we're seeing a shift in nuance is because we need simple narratives to justify the fact that if reform come into power, and if there is a party like Labour, which we can say they are right on these policies, they are not substantially going to change anything in regards to class interests. Instead, they want to stay here. They just want to move the Overton window and scapegoat someone else to put forward their policies. And this is reflected in America as well. We're seeing Trump do heavy cutting of the state and creating a massive scapegoat where he's sending people over to El Salvador, where the Supreme Court is ruling that they weren't supposed to be there. So I think this whole conversation really ties back to what is the party in power, or the party that wants to be in power, going to change? Nothing. They're still capitalists after all. But what do they need to create an image of to create more and more pro-business policies and not fix the ground root issues that the UK is facing?
Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.